thank you very much for having me here this evening. I appreciate it greatly. And should I call you the Admiral?
No.
As Bonnie said, I am not a professional speaker, so I just talk to people. And I learned that from our mother. She did the same thing for many, many years. She just talked to people. Not always making sense, but she did talk to people, so that's okay. As Bonnie said, I am the oldest daughter from Georgia Spanky Roberts, who was the first Tuskegee Airman inducted in first Tuskegee Airman cadet in the program. And so he was a lot of firsts. And so this is what we're trying to make sure that we keep his legacy alive. And he and our mom were married at the graduation ceremony of the first class. I'll go into that a little bit later on. So she was like the first lady of Tuskegee. So we're very proud to be able to follow both of their footsteps. I'll give you a little background history of our dad. He went to college at the age of 15 years old. He graduated at 18 years old with a 4-year degree in mechanical engineering. His mother was a teacher. And when he graduated from college, he had nothing to do because she would not allow him to come home because his only job options were being a busboy at the country club in West Virginia or going into the coal mines. And that just wasn't working for her baby child. So, being our grandmother, she called the president of the college and said, can he stay another year? Nobody tells Estelle no, so they said, okay, he could stay another year. But in order to stay, he had to take courses because there was no off-campus housing, so he had to take courses in order to live in the dormitory. Excuse me. Our dad was a brilliant person, but he was also an 18-year-old boy, and all that goes with it. Usually for most presentations, I said he was hormonal, but you all know what I mean. The year he decided to stay an extra year was number one, because he really had nothing he could do with his degree, and also because he spotted a skirt going around the corner of the library and decided, oh, I want to stay and see who that belongs to. Needless to say, it belonged to our mother. So he, he was an engineering major, had a degree in engineering. Our mom was a musician. She sang, played piano, beautiful contralto voice and soprano voice, I'm sorry, and played the piano beautifully. Our dad had 2 left feet and a tin ear. So he had to figure out how to be able to woo the fair maiden to get her to his side. Her roommate was a psychology major, so the courses he took during that extra year were psychology. And his roommates were all what? Musicians. So he was getting battered from both sides because she thought he was a big-headed boy and she couldn't stand him. One of the things that he decided to do while he was there was to make sure that she got to class on time. And she had a dormitory room was on the bottom floor. So every morning he would come by and tap on the window, wake her up, and present her with a beautiful rose. And everyone was like, oh, that's so sweet. Until the dean of the horticulture department said, Mr. Roberts, we understand you're wooing the fair maiden, Edith McMillan. However, the president would like you to please stop plucking off the blossoms from his prized presidential rose garden. And he's like, oh, okay, but you just want to, you just, stick with that. So this kind of gives you an idea of the kind of person he was. He was a great man. He had a wicked sense of humor. Dry sense of humor, and he was a little crazy. But he was also a great leader. One of the things that happened that year he was at the college was that they started the civilian pilot training program. The militaries had for years decided, there was a study done after World War I that said the black brain was smaller than the white brain. Therefore, we were unable to take orders. We could not lead other soldiers. We couldn't use complex machinery like a gun. And so therefore, the only thing they were allowed to do was dig trenches and be the valets to the generals and the colonels and work in the kitchen. So in other words, they continued on with the subservient jobs in the military just like they had to do in civilian life. When World War II broke out and Hitler was running rampant in Europe, the United States finally decided to join the war, and the NAACP and the Auburn League and other black organizations and the black press all got together and said to the president, you are completely ignoring an entire generation of men and women who want to serve their country, but not as valets and cooks and trench diggers for the latrines. This is ridiculous. So they said, okay, all right, we'll set up something. And they decided to set up for them to become pilots. Such was born the civilian pilot training program. Because everything had to be fair and equal back in those days, they also had civilian pilot training programs set up in 6 other white colleges. They had 6 black colleges were also set up with the CPT training. One of which was West Virginia State, which is where our mom and dad were going to school. My mother was actively trying to ignore him, and he was actively trying to impress her. So when people asked, oh, was your dad, knew he was going into history and everything when he became a pilot? No, he was trying to impress her. Okay, so he became a pilot because he just knew she wouldn't be able to resist a pilot. So after 30 hours of learning how to fly in an open cockpit trainer with no seatbelts, shudder the thought, she went up with him on a flight. Because he had his license. He had 30 hours in, so he knew what he was doing. So he took her up and flew her around and flew over her grandmother's house in Charleston, West Virginia, and she excitedly said, oh my God, did you see me? He took me up. And her grandmother told the future and said, you're going to break your neck falling around behind that boy. So they planned on getting married after she graduated from college, because he was already done. So he convinced her, and she finally went, yeah, okay, I'll wait for you. We'll get married after I graduate. He went on and ended up being the first cadet accepted into the Tuskegee Airmen program. He also found out that the cadets had to be single. So he had to go back and kind of convince her, will you wait for me? And she's like, okay. So she's now graduated and has a job and is planning her wedding, like every young woman does. So on graduation day, March 7th, 1942, there were 13 men that were accepted into the Tuskegee Airmen program for the first class. 5 graduated. Out of those 5 were B.O. Davis Jr., who was the first black 20th century graduate of West Point, whose father was the first black Army general, first black general in the Army. And then our dad, and then Lemuel Custis, Charles DeBow, and Mac Ross. It was a very proud day. Our mother went down with his parents and her mother to see her young man graduate. And after the ceremony was over, full of dignitaries from all over everywhere to prove, oh my God, these first guys actually made it to pilot training. They're all getting ready to leave, and the commander says, wait, folks, don't leave. We have a wedding to perform. Calls her up out of the audience. And our dad is standing there just grinning from ear to ear. And he says, she goes, what? And he says, okay, we have a wedding to perform. So they got married right there at the graduation ceremony of the first class. So she was more or less known.